Hello and welcome back to Fossway Classic Car Workshop. Today I'm going to be sorting out all of this pile that I've now taken off the car. I need to work out which bit needs to go to the platers and which bits I can refurbish myself. So I'll be taking all the plastic trim off, separating the overriders and going through each light individually. The additional thing is taking the bonnet off the car. So that's at least a three-person job. You need a person either side and then someone taking the pins out. So that's what I'll be starting with. So we can see here the key parts that hold the bonnet onto the car. This, with the spring here, is what stops the bonnet slamming down. So this spring tensions as you lower the bonnet into its closed position. So I need to take this off first, and as you can see, there's no tension on the spring at the moment. So that's relatively simple, just a couple of bolts, it'll come off. The main pivot point is down here, so there's one of these each side. The other thing, of course, I need to disconnect is the harness here for the front headlamps. With a 7/16 spanner on this side, 1/2" socket. On this side, I should be able to get this undone. This end, it's 5/8 either side. Right, so that's out. Put this all back together again. Good, that's one. Disconnecting the harness here is simply a question of rocking this up and down slightly, side to side. We see we've got a nice socket connection here onto the bonnet. Okay, so if I take out this side as well, all that's left is to disconnect both of the pivot pins, get some help and lift it off. As a precaution to prevent damage, I'm going to use this water pipe lagging here to protect the edges because the bonnet will stand up on its end here. As an additional precaution, I think I'll get some around the wheel arch here as well. So here's the bolt on the right hand side of the pivot. Ended up taking the bonnet off by undoing the 4 bolts on the floor there that hold it on with this bracket. It's worth pointing out here that there are these big spacers that help set the bonnet clearances correctly, so I need to make sure that I keep them in the right order. There's a big bolt that goes through the middle here that I took off earlier, but on this side this is just lifting straight out now. The other side's being a bit more difficult. This side here I've got this space which I'll move off, but this doesn't really want to even rotate very much, so I have to get the screwdriver in here to really work it round. I've got some penetration fluid in there and working that so that it hopefully seeps in and makes it easier to get off, but I think I'm just going to end up having to try and tap it off, but I don't want to damage anything. So at points like this you can start to see the original paint coming through as well, because that grey, that silver grey there is the original paint colour. In here it's almost like the under seal has been painted over with red, and so just a bit of careful scraping will reveal the original paint colour. In this tube here, if we look at this side, you can see really clearly that this is just crisping off. So it's been given a really light blow over, and that is definitely the original silver grey, which is nice to see. All of these shims came out as well. I mean, there's a great big pile of them, so I want to make sure that I clean these up and reuse where possible. But you can see how much kind of setup each one of these cars needed out of the factory, because it's hardly like a mass production thing where each one is the same. These are very much, each car would be slightly different, and so you need to get the bonnet clearances and everything just right, and that's unique to each car. With the bonnet off, I'm now going to go through this pile of bits, piece by piece, and separate out the bits that are ready to go to frame platers, such as this rear screen chrome trim. The rest of the bits I'll clean up piece by piece in turn, because when it comes to reassembly, I don't want to be cleaning the pieces up then. So it's much better to do it now, get them organised, get them nicely wrapped up and put away so that they're ready to put back on the car at a later stage. Now, the splitter here, there's a couple of bits there where the corrosion's gone almost all the way through. So I need to decide whether to get this replated or get it replaced. I think I'd prefer to keep the original. I think I've seen that they're not particularly expensive to get replacement parts, but I suspect it probably won't be as solid as the original part. So I don't have matching screws here, so it's obviously not original. This flat-headed screw actually looks like it's probably the kind of thing that would have been there originally, and this cross-headed one probably isn't. So that popped out. Undo this side. And it wasn't even fully in there. Backing plate for the growler badge. Take care of that. I'll have to see if I can repair this. Just polish it up. You can't actually see the corrosion all the way through. It's a bit pitted on the reverse side here, but yeah, I think they'll be able to do a good job with that and keep the original one at least. So I'll put all these together, including that tiny little screw, backing plate and the growler. Don't think they need labelling up because that's pretty obvious where they came from. These windscreen trims have got this lovely stuff here that's kind of never going to quite set. Adhesive. So be careful. Whilst it's sticking to me like mad, it's happier to come off the chrome bit at least. Comes off together quite well. There we go. Okay, hopefully that's about the right state to add to the pile over there. A bit of a kink in this, so the chrome platers will hopefully be able to sort that out. Next I've got the bumpers, so this is a simple case of peeling off the trim that holds it against the body. Of course I need to undo this bolt here for the overrider. Right, so there's the overrider, piece of trim. Of course definitely want to get this original one replated rather than get a reproduction. That's good. And on with the next. Of course, I hadn't realised that. The front bumper is made up of this one part here, and then there's a very small bit that bolts onto the overrider at the end here. So a couple of little 7/16 set screws just to take this little end piece off. Coming undone quite nicely. Okay, so there we go. This is where the Amco bars would have gone through. So I think I'll take them out and ask them to be filled in. So I don't want this end piece going to the platers with the bobbin on, so I'm just unscrewing it here, and I'll put this to one side. Give it an inspection and see whether it's actually needs to be replaced, or this one will be good to go back on. An important pair of parts that I've left on the other workbench, the door handles, of course. So you can see that these have really corroded and pitted over the years with the wind and rain that it's been exposed to, so those definitely won't just polish up as they are. There's plenty of wax oil in the door cavity, which has kept all of this protected, which is good, albeit makes it a bit sticky. There we go. It looks like there's a fair bit of dum-dum being used as the sealing medium there as well. It's not like there's a gasket or anything, it's just got this kind of paste that seals the handle from the body and stops water getting in. I actually want to get this dum-dum out of the way, because that's not going to be very helpful to the platers. Here I've got the B-pillar chrome piece. So this is where the door seals up against. This bit fits in front of the quarter light there. Now, most of it looks absolutely fine, but because the outside part of it here has been exposed, there's just a little bit of surface corrosion, so I think it's worth getting these replated. But of course it's got this piece that bolts on, or screws on to here, and that holds the actual pivot point of the window frame here in position. So I'm going to take that bit out because that doesn't need rechroming, and I'll keep the screws separately, but the main part of it does. So I'll keep them separate. And both of these can go on the plating pile. And of course now can the quarter glass frames as well. I'll take this catch off because I don't really need that replating. But the actual frame itself will need to go into the pile. I've now got the door frame here, and this needs to go in the chrome pile as well. But of course I've got the felt channels that the window runs in. I've got this seal that runs around the edge here, as well as another one that goes onto the B-pillar. Now, this seal obviously is completely worn out, but I want to keep it, so I've actually labelled it up. So if I keep that, it's always useful to keep the original seals as a reference for the section so that you can get a replacement, as well as for the length it was originally. So I'll pull that out carefully and box that up. Right, and then this one here, quite satisfying to pull out. This piece that goes at the rear of the bonnet, I'm going to polish with some Autosol because the chrome that's actually visible, which is this part here, is pretty good. It's not the most visible or prominent part on the car, and I don't want to go getting bits re-chromed unnecessarily. There are a few other bits and pieces I need to keep an eye on as well. So the three wipers have got these bezels that they sit on. So these look as though they need to be re-chromed, so I'll need to get that off. The screws off the wiper stalk here, I should just be able to prise these out because they're not actually screwed on from underneath. So there's probably, yeah, there we go. Just a bit of dum-dum holding them on here. So, let's try that. There we go. If I start to look at the interior, there are all sorts of little bits and pieces that you need to consider. So these plates here, I think those will be okay. And these luggage retention arms, a really lovely idea. So when you've got the luggage all in the back, you can fold these up basically to stop the luggage joining in the passenger compartment. So albeit those are at a slightly different angle to each other, but because of where they sit, they're really quite exposed, and you can see that those need replating if they're to look really good and new. If I fold this up, again you can see the latches here. Probably okay to leave them and just polish them up once it's all taken apart. Of course there's the handbrake lever as well, and the grab handle over there. You can see that there's a chrome piece at the side. Again here for the sun visors. I'll take this off just to give it a closer look in the light. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so looking at this close up, you can really see that there is some corrosion there on the stem that's come over the years, and on the mount here as well. Another chrome trim that's easy to overlook is this one that runs along the sill here. So this gets a lot of bashing as you get in and out of the car, and it's quite scratched, and you can probably see there's a couple of dings in it as well. So this is almost certainly a push fit item. If I can just get something behind it and start to knock it off. There we go. So there's a little clip pinging to the ground there. Try and carefully pull this off. So we've got some now rusty clips on the inside that just hold it onto the flange on the body here. You can see there. Looking through to the boot. If I open this up, if I look here, you can see that there's rust in there. I think the arm itself is fine. So let's get in here and get this pin out so I can remove this piece here and at least get that replated. Now to undo this. I'm wondering if there's going to be a kick myself moment when I miss something once everything's at the platers. Should be a bit annoying. Right, so I can now give this a close look, and you can see that there's a fair bit of rust on there. Most of that would actually polish off, but it would be nice to get this redone properly. I've just dug out these rear quarter light latches, and you can see it's made of 3 separate links. So this one's done with a roll pin in the middle. This one's got a very satisfying click. So there's a spring and a little latch in there. You can see that there is corrosion on here and a little bit on this part as well. I'm not sure I want to take the whole lot apart in order to be able to get each individual bit done, but I'll certainly take the roll pin out of here and separate this part off. So I've just brought this over to the vise to try and drift this roll pin out. And there's the little roll pin. Okay, so I want to get this luggage retention arm out. Got to do it from this side. Okay, so that plate's fine. So this part here, okay, pull that through. So we can see more clearly now the wear and tear on this luggage retention arm. Yeah, it really does need replating. I've got to get this hinge pin out here, so it's just a piece of rod that's been rounded over on one end to basically lock it into place. So I just need to get enough material off there to where it's been spread out at the end, and then it should pull out quite easily. It's quite nice to see the simplicity of what's been done here. So there's a rivet here holding in what looks like 4 pieces of spring steel, and that's all that acts to make this work. So you can see I'm starting to make progress now getting that pin drifted out. I'm taking it easy because I don't want to cause any damage, but I've just checked out how much these cost, and one of these is about £164, I think it is. So a pair of them, it's getting quite expensive, so it's really worth trying to drift this out and repair and replate the original. In the end, I've just drilled this pin out. So if you look here, I've got a hole that's slightly smaller. Now I've got what remains of the pin loose, so I'm just going to knock that through. There we have what remains of that pin that just wouldn't come out. So pleased with that. You can see here that the boot release is really quite scratched, and then the bezel around it has also got some corrosion in there. So I'm going to take these 2 bits off as well. But first of all, I need to remove the trim panel. So we've got 2 screws here, 1 down there, and I should be able to start prising this panel out. Take the bezel off. Okay, so that's the bezel. I need to take this little panel off here to get at the mechanism for this. There we go. Right, get the cable there. Oh, right, that's a bit of a faff, but I've got it out. So now this is off the car, you can see the scratches, a bit of pitting that's in this, so it would be quite nice to get it off. It's held in place with this pin around which this spring is wound. Obviously I've disconnected the spring here because that goes in the little hole in there. And the pin then is just flatted off around this side to hold it all in place. So you can see the way that this is nicely pivoting around it. So it's moving from side to side. So if I just take the ends off that pin, I should be able to drift it out and take this part off to be rechromed. So after a bit of faffing around, I've now got to the point where I can pull this pin out, hopefully. And here it comes. So get it most of the way out. There we go. And this is the part that I want to be sent off to be rechromed, and obviously need to make sure I can refit this as well. I haven't taken much material off the end. I might need to take just a little bit more off this where there's that little shoulder, so I can get it through and then flatten the end off this again to stick it back into position. But as you can see, there's loads of wax oil here. It's all over my hands now. which indicates that the cavity behind which this sits, of course, is nicely protected. So I can now have a look in there as well. I've checked the handbrake and I think that'll polish up fine, so I'm not going to put that in the chroming pile. The last things I need to check are all of these lamps. So these are the ones that go at the rear, these are the ones that go at the front, and it's these parts here that obviously water and salt and everything the atmosphere can get to over the years. Now they looked as though they should be okay, so I've got some chrome polish, well, some general all-purpose metal polish. This Autostol stuff is the best I know. It's very, very good stuff, and a rag. And so if you look closely at the moment, you can see it's looking quite tired, tarnished, and not so nice. If I get a bit of this on here, you can quite quickly see that actually underneath the grime is a really, really nicely chromed original part. So it's almost perfect. And so I've got no intention of putting that in the pile. So I need to prise off these gaskets, take the lenses off, and actually give it all a really good clean the lenses up, box them up separately. I've just done a tot up and I've got 37 separate pieces of chrome here which all need attending to. I'm going to put them all for safekeeping into this box and make an inventory so I know exactly what I've got, because it's easy to lose track. Obviously some of the pieces, like the bits that join the windscreen surrounds, are tiny. Other bits obviously, like the door frames, are more significant. So it's going to cost a fair bit to get all this done, but it'll be really worth it because the car, once it's painted, once this chrome's refitted, it'll look fantastic. Please join me next time back here at Fosway Classic Car Workshop, as it's time to get the engine and gearbox out and get them off for rebuild. So let's drain the fluids, start taking everything off and making way, getting the engine crane in, lifting it out. Thanks very much for watching.